Hi, my name is Steve Rahi. I am a customer engineer focused on management technologies. Today's discussion is part 7 of an ongoing series uh, focused on configuration profiles. We'll look specifically at how you can use configuration profiles to deliver delivery optimization settings through Intune. So Intune, of course, part of Microsoft Endpoint Manager. So as we get started, this is actually a session that I've wanted to get to for a while because delivery optimization is such an important thing to understand. You'll probably hear me mention this again as we go through this session. If you are using Intune to manage any Windows device, then having delivery optimization in place, very, very highly recommended, very important thing to have to help with your network management for different downloads and things. Again, you'll hear me say that again. So here's our agenda that we want to follow as we go through this session. What is delivery optimization? Why do we care about delivery optimization? I want to show you or talk about delivery optimization in terms of requirements, show you a bit about how it works. The fun part will be configuring this, showing this to you in action, and then we'll wrap up with some troubleshooting tips and tricks. So what is delivery optimization? Well, delivery optimization, put simply, is a service that is built into every Windows 10 version. It was introduced in Windows 10 15.11, and then it certainly was optimized and enabled by default in Windows 10 17.09 or later. You can also take advantage of this in certain versions of Office 365. Right? Basically, this is local content sharing. So there is a good number of solutions that you can use for effectively peer-to-peer content sharing, right? So we have a number in Microsoft Configuration Manager. We have branch cache that's part of Windows. We have third-party solutions such as Adaptiva and 1E Nomad, and each have their place, also each have their limitations. Delivery optimization is yet another, but in many ways, kind of the cream of the crop of all. You know, you have to evaluate all of these to understand their usage scenario and what works for you. But this is definitely one to really take a look at, to really understand, because it is built into Windows 10. It is the native solution in Windows 10, and lots of effort has been put into it to make it configurable, to make it customizable, and to tune it to the way that you want to use it. Certainly, it can be leveraged by Microsoft Endpoint Manager. So again, it is not part of Microsoft Endpoint Manager, but it can be used by Intune, and so that's what we're talking about today, where we can use that with Intune. Also supported in Configuration Manager. So there will be a session that I will do shortly after this, where we can use delivery optimization even in a config manager environment through different capabilities, which we'll save until we get to that discussion, right? Ultimately, why do we care about this? Well, it's all about optimized content acquisition. We have devices that are connected by VPN. We have devices that are in remote offices. We have devices that are just out at people's homes. We have all sorts of different configurations, and this delivery optimization solution is geared toward helping optimize your bandwidth usage in really all of those scenarios, right? Avoid having to manually manage the download of content to an offline source so that your devices can get it. Delivery optimization, very configurable, very efficient. You have multiple download choices. You have the ability to use delivery optimization with multiple types of content, which you'll see in just a minute. Certainly Windows Update, feature updates, and more for sure than that. And the ultimate goal of any peer-to-peer solution is to reduce network congestion, whether that be on your LAN, whether that be on your WAN, same thing. So prevent overloading corporate networks and being able to, again, share content seamlessly with peers that are configured. Okay, so what are the requirements of setting up delivery optimization? Well, there's just a few, because like I mentioned, it's already included in all Windows 10 versions. So any version of Windows 10, you can use delivery optimization. There are some very definite key improvements in Windows 10 1709. You can also use this with Office. Now, if you're going to use it with Office, you're not going to use Config Manager to deploy those Office updates. And you will need one of these two versions, either 1808 or 1908 or better, in order to use this. There are also endpoints that you will need to make sure your devices have access to. And so instead of just putting a bunch of URLs on the screen, there is this document which will list the endpoints needed for delivery optimization so that your devices can actually use that. Okay, how does this work? Right, so this is a very simple diagram that I put together just to try to give you an idea, right? This is, again, conceptually really no different than any kind of peer-to-peer solution, except for the flexibility and various scenarios where it can be used. So first, we have our Intune service. That actually should be wider, sorry. But this is our Intune service, sorry, Intune storage, Intune service. And ultimately, whenever you deploy content, not all the time, right? Depending, but when you deploy content like a line of business application or things like that, right? That content will come from Intune storage. And so that's kind of what I'm depicting here. Understand there are some deficits in this diagram because there are certain other types of contents, like content from the Microsoft Store or content from Microsoft updates or things like that, where the source of that content will not be Intune storage. So I kind of use Intune storage in an all-inclusive, kind of context. But the point is, you will have devices in different configurations. So in this case, we have devices behind a single NAT. And so one of these devices, or multiple, will need to go directly to the content source and start to pull it down. But once one device has it available behind your NAT, other devices behind your NAT can start to share that content, right? Another example would be you can specify a group. So I just call this group A, but the point is you can designate a group that devices are part of, and then any device in that group can share content with each other, right? And there's a way to actually go configure that group, which I will show you as we go forward, and then you just have a device that's out here by itself that does not have delivery optimization, and so the only choice it has is to go retrieve the content directly. Again, don't get tied up on this. I'm using the Intune data source as kind of a catch-all for all of the places that a device could connect to pull content, such as Microsoft Updates or the Microsoft Store, etc. Right? Okay, so starting to edge toward how we configure this. So the first, before I get there, I mentioned that there are a whole bunch of content categories that delivery optimization will be able to deliver. And here is the list, right, taken out of our documentation. If you scan this list, you'll see that most everything you would care about is in this list of things that you can deploy to your devices, right? Okay, so now as we start to edge toward configure, there's a few things that I want to specifically call out, and you're going to see them again as we go along. And these are basically the configuration options that you have when you're setting this up. And so a few of them here. Download mode. This one has been available since 15.11 version of Windows 10. It is critical. And these are your 7 options that you can use for configuring the download mode, how delivery optimization will work peer-to-peer. So HTTP only, no peering. Basically, it's disabled. Here's what you're going to see in the demo where we have devices behind a NAT. Here's what I mentioned where we can have a private group of devices that are able to share content, and then blended and bypass mode and so on, right? And so each one of these have their details that you'll want to understand if you're going to use one of them, but they should be pretty self-explanatory right on the surface as well. restrict peer selection. So that's in 1803 or better. And what that allows you to do is when you're using one of these two methods, either NAT or private group, you can actually define how your devices will select their peers, right? And so there's different ways you can do that. There's a drop down for that. I'll try to remember to show that to you whenever I get into the UI. Group ID source, again, in 1803, requires download mode set to groups, right? And then you can specify the group ID source for those devices. I'll try to remember to show that one to you as well. Bandwidth optimization. So how do you want to configure bandwidth? Do you want to do it by percentage? Do you want to have an absolute percentage or a setting for bandwidth optimization? However you want to do that, right? Okay. And then delay your download. So there's 4 settings that are kind of tied to the idea of delaying download. What this means at the end of the day is you're defining in these settings how long your device will attempt to find a peer before it directly starts a download from the content source location. So the idea is to try to optimize the content delivery from delivery optimization, but to allow that fallback to a normal source if you need to allow that fallback. So the caveat with this is while your device is waiting to try to find a delivery optimization peer, it will look like that device is hung waiting, right? And it is waiting. It's not hung. It's just counting down before it goes and fails over. So there's some suggestions for how to configure this. You can evaluate these in your own environment and decide what those are, and you'll see those again in a minute. There's other options here that you can specify for devices that either are able to participate in delivery optimization or are not. So the minimum RAM required, the recommended is 4. This is where you're going to see me deviate in my lab because my devices only have 2 gig of RAM, and I want them to participate in delivery optimization. So my setting is to require 1 gig, and you'll see that as we go through the config I have deployed. Minimum disk space required for peer caching. So I think I did leave the 32 gig disk space, which should be fine for me. Minimum content file size for peer caching. So the recommended is 10 meg. What this really is saying, well, actually, as I think about that, I think I've seen it 10 meg in one place, 100 meg in the other. Bottom line is it's up to you to decide what you want to do. In my case, I set this to 1 meg, right? Why? Because what this setting does is if you have files that equal or exceed this setting, they will be stored in the cache and will be eligible for sharing to a peer. But if they aren't this size, then they will need to be downloaded directly from the content source, right? The idea being trying to strike a balance between storing every single little file and just storing the ones that will give you the best optimization for usage across your network. Okay, and then other settings, minimum battery level. So 40% is what's recommended, and you can adjust that to whatever. If you have that battery drop below this configured value, then any active downloads will just pause from that delivery optimization peer. Here you can modify your cache drive if you want to. The recommended is your system drive. How long you store things in your cache, you can change there. And then there's just a few others. Maximum cache size, how you want to do that, percentage absolute, whether you want to allow VPN peer caching, and then things like cache server host names and so on. Now this one's interesting, and you'll see this again in just a minute, where in certain scenarios, specifically in this case, like with something like with Config Manager, you can actually set up a server that will basically act as a cache of content that your devices can reach more potentially readily than going to the internet, and basically use that as the content acquisition source. I'm not going to use that because it doesn't make sense in this scenario. When we get to the config manager side, probably, but that's where that is. And then here are the other two downloads delays for foreground and background downloads. that you might want to configure. All right, so all of that, and now it's time to go actually see how this is configured. So with that, let me pull in the Intune console, the Microsoft Endpoint Manager Admin Center. And what I'm going to do is navigate to Devices, and then under Devices, I want to go to Configuration Profiles. I'll go to Windows first, and then Configuration Profiles, and then you'll see my configuration profiles. So I have a few set up here, right? So I really only have one deployed, and this is what is controlling my lab, but I do have a couple set up, right? So the first thing is I'm going to show you the options for creating. So if I want to go create a configuration profile, the first thing I'm going to do is select Windows 10, and then notice I have Settings Catalog or Templates. So I'm going to show you both, right? Here's the Settings Catalog, and if I were to go to Settings Catalog and click Create, I'm just going to go a very short distance down this ramp, and I'm not going to save this, so I don't really care about the name, and click Next. Now I get to choose what settings from the Settings Catalog I want to add. So I'm going to add settings, and then I'm going to scroll down and choose Delivery Optimization here, and then I'm going to create, right? And you see all of these settings that are present. Now, I can read info about them, whatever. So I'm going to go ahead and select all of these settings, or I can put I could put check marks in them individually if I wanted to create those settings. But then I'm done there, right? So I have all of my settings in here. And so now that I have all the settings, you'll see some that have default details in them, like 10 for the maximum cache size, and other things. Like here's the delivery optimization cache host. Now this is one in an Intune world that I don't care about, so I can just simply click on this to set this to not configured, and it goes away, right? And notice now that it went away, I have one setting that is not configured, 26 that are visible. Then I have zeros throughout this, right? And so 0 means that it's not going to wait, really. And if you hover over information, it will tell you that the default setting or the recommended setting is a certain value. The asterisk here means that you need to configure something in here, otherwise you will be blocked from continuing. And then here's your download mode, right? Here's your download mode that you can then choose how that's going to operate. If you have a download mode of NAT, then you don't need a group ID. And so I can simply set that to not configured. And so it's not going to be required. The group ID source also I can set to not configured. But here's what the group ID sources can be, where we obtain that group ID source. And so it could be manual, it could be from one of these options, whatever. But if you're not using groups, you don't need that one either, right? And so just walking through that a little bit, I'm going to exit out at this stage and show you the one that I actually have configured. So here's the settings catalog version that I have configured, right? Okay, so, and again, want to call your attention, well, let's start at the top. I can see, that's interesting. So I should have 3 there. It was there yesterday. Let me refresh this for a minute. Let me go back and see. So that is deployed. It should be configured. Let me view report just to make sure. That's interesting. None of my devices are targeted. Okay, that is unexpected. So let me go back here and see what happened. I might have cleared out the assignment. Let me see if I can get that delivered back. It doesn't really make any difference for my demo here, but let me just go make sure I can get that configured back again. So my assignments, I'm going to edit. So it is actually in there. Very interesting. Okay, so that's actually not showing up. I'm not sure what happened. Again, it's not going to really affect my demo here because my delivery optimization settings were already deployed. I'll show them to you in a minute. But this dashboard will tell you how many have been successfully deployed, how many are in error state, whatever. If you drill in, then you would see a list of devices here that have actually received a given configuration. And then um, here we could go in and get details, which would then show us setting by setting by setting what has all been configured, right? Okay. Again, a bit weird that it doesn't show deployed. Um, I'm thinking it shouldn't affect anything going forward, but that may just be an oddball thing. Not sure, but shouldn't affect anything. You can definitely see that this is deployed to a group of devices, and so the assignments is to my demo delivery optimization group, and that is correct. And so it should be. So there hopefully shouldn't be any impact on the demo as we continue. Right. So this is where I can look at status. Now, if I want to go in and look at the details of what I have configured, I can look at my configuration here. I can expand out and see all of the options that I actually do have configured right here. But if I want to go look and edit and so on, I can pull it up this way. And then we'll see our familiar banner showing that I have 6 out of my 27 settings that are not configured, and that can be just fine. It is fine in this scenario. I don't need that. If for some reason I wanted to visualize that and look at what is or is not included in my current configuration, then I can go down to delivery optimization and see the list at the bottom. It will show me with check marks what I do and don't have configured. So again, just to call out a couple that are not relevant to where I am right now, but will be interesting in some scenarios would be the cache server host name, do cache host name right here. And that would be if you do have something like a Microsoft Connected Cache server configured, you can specify it here. And then the do cache host source, and that would be where you could go configure how your devices are supposed to get that information about who their cache server is, and you could do that through DHCP and option 255, option 235, maybe, and again, those discussions are kind of beyond the scope of what I want to do here. So what I do want to do here is walk you through a little bit of the configuration that I do have in place in this policy that I have assigned and is for some reason not showing up, but should be in place on the device. So I just want to walk you through a few of them. One is, again, the download delay setting. So I'm using the default. You can tweak these and adjust them as needed. But you'll certainly, if you hover over the information, you can see the recommended in many cases and so forth, right? I'm not allowing VPN. The download mode that I'm using is NAT. So my devices are in a NAT, and that's what I'm going to use. My devices are all on the same subnet, all on my machine here. I'm allowing 50% of bandwidth to be used. Here's my max cache age, the max cache size. You can tweak these again as you need to. Max foreground download bandwidth, 0 is set to unlimited, right? As you can see, there's no information here, but 0 is unlimited. Minimum background QoS, different settings, right? Okay. Now, one thing that I don't want to get away from really quick is I'm using NAT for my download mechanism, right? So I've configured my download mode with NAT. I could do a group ID. Well, if I do a group ID, then there are 2 settings that are currently hidden from here that I would need to configure, and that would be what is the group ID for it. And I think there's another setting along with it. So that's where you get to the question, okay, well, if you're going to use a group ID, how would you go about configuring what the identifier is for that? Well, let me show you real quick. Just a quick example. So if you're going to use a group ID, then you need to supply what that group ID is, right? And so one of the things you can do is use PowerShell to generate that group ID. And so you see this that I pasted in here, a little bit hard to read. Here, let me try to do it again. Paste that in. Well, I was trying to grab it. It's this GUID : new GUID is a function in PowerShell that will give you a GUID. And so the group ID is, the groups are represented by a GUID. And so you can have one GUID, you can have 20 GUIDs, and you can have 20 groups, you can have one group, and you can organize them accordingly. You can assign this GUID through DHCP. You can assign it manually if you want to, for whatever reason, for testing. There's a lot of flexibility around the groups. And the nice thing about using groups is they are not dependent on the devices all necessarily being in the same subnet or in the same location or whatever else. So there are places to use the group for sure. It's just in my lab right now, I'm using the NAT because it makes the most sense. So anyway, you see all of these settings, and all of these settings are in place. I'm on the system drive. I'm restricting peer selection by subnet mask, so you can do that. You could do local peer discovery if you wanted to, but this is how I have mine configured. And this is what's deployed, and this is what should be in place on my devices still, and we'll see in a minute as we progress closer to this, if it is in fact still in place on the device, right? Okay, now let's keep going. So this is settings catalog. If I go back and I look at my devices, and I look at it's still loading here for some reason. Okay, it looks like it finished. And I go back to my list of Windows devices and go to, my list of configuration profiles. You'll see I have one for templates that was created with templates as well. So I'm going to show you that. The templates, I'm actually going to go create one with templates. Templates are really an interesting thing because it's really a preference, whether you use the settings catalog or whether you use the templates. I would consider templates maybe to be a more guided process. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to go back and I'm going to create a new configuration profile, and I'm going to select templates this time. So platform Windows 10, and I'm going to use templates. Okay. So if I scroll down and I use the delivery optimization template, well, I don't scroll down too far there, right? Then I'm going to use that, and I'm going to just simply create that. Great. And so I give it a name in just a second. There we go. So I give it a name and go forward, right? So next. Now, I see every single setting that you would have seen other places, except the difference is it's a little bit more of a guided experience, right? And one thing to notice here is none of these settings have asterisks beside them, which means you don't have to configure anything. In fact, I can just click next with nothing configured and I'm fine, right? Also, notice whereas on the settings catalog, you had to select something specifically on the right to include or not include a setting, right? Or you had to put check marks behind them all. Here you have a drop down that allows you to say, not configured for various settings where that option is applicable, right? So again, just a little bit more of a guided process. The idea is exactly the same, and really it's up to you which one you want to use, right? One more thing I want to show you here. So one other thing that I've configured, I've not actually deployed, so I'm not using it, but I want to show you how to deploy it. I mentioned that you can use delivery optimization with Office. And so if you're using delivery optimization or want to use delivery optimization with Office, you need to create a custom configuration profile. And that's basically because the settings are not present in the UI. To be able to use just the UI to set this, you have to deliver them with the OMA URI configuration, which is not hard, right? And I'm just going to show you how I enabled it. So I'm going to go to properties on this, and we'll edit the configuration of it. Already you can see that I'm using two OMA URI configuration settings to enable delivery optimization for Office. And effectively, first, I'm going to enable delivery optimization for Office. And I do that by simply uh, giving the configuration a name and then specifying the specific OMA URI mechanism that I want to address with whatever I'm configuring. And reminder that OMA URI's paths are case sensitive for sure. This will be a string, and then the string in this case will be a bunch of XML that basically defines how you enable Office to use delivery optimization. And then I pair that with another one, which get delivery optimization as primary. And here I just have to enable that. So I'll edit this, same kind of config, just a little bit of a different um, pathway, right? And then all I'm doing is putting the tag in enable. And I'm not deploying that. That's really not the point of what I want to show you here, but I did want to show you how you would go through and set that up if you wanted to enable for Office, right? All right, so now let's actually go see if we can see some of this working. And this is where we're going to determine really quickly whether those settings that I did think were deployed are still deployed and are still in place on the devices they should be, and we'll see what we can see. So in my lab, again, I mentioned I'm using NAT. I have 3 virtual machines. I have basically those machines on the same subnet. So should be a fairly easy demo to understand, right? Now, the thing, I'm going to kind of start into this backwards. I'm going to start first by validating delivery optimization is actually having an impact on these devices. I'm going to do that intentionally because I'm hoping to actually trigger a deployment of another app. It may or may not work in the time frame in which I'm recording. It doesn't really matter if it doesn't, because you're going to see what I want you to see anyway. But, hey, just to try to add a little bit more, let's see if we can do that. So I'm going to pull in a couple of virtual machines. I've got 3 here that I'm going to connect to that are all running. I'm going to pull each one to the side as I pull it up. Sorry, I should have already had this done, but let's just get it done real quick. Come on. Okay. And then get the last one, then we'll see, right? So VM10, well, let me just show you one at a time. All right, here we go. All right, so let me get this out of the way. I'm going to grab virtual machine 10 here. And so what I want to do is just show you really fast a few things, right? As soon as I get logged in here. Okay, so the idea is to be able to validate that delivery optimization is running. So there's a couple of places that I can show you that. One I'll just start with here, and then I'll show you a couple of the others in a minute. I'm just going to go into the Settings app. And if I go into the Settings app and go to Updates and Security, I'll see Delivery Optimization here. I know that certain settings are in place on this device because I see this red banner saying, hey, there's some settings here that are being controlled not by you, but by your organization, right? And then if I scroll down a little bit more, if I want to understand whether delivery optimization is delivering any value at all to me, I can click on Activity Monitor. And so what I see really fast is what percentage of my content download is coming from Microsoft, which percentage is coming from my PCs on my local network. Another way to say this is my peers, right? And so I just have 3 machines here, 3 devices just to test, but you can see this device, 34.48% of the content is coming from my peers. Now, let me just pull up the other 2 just to kind of get a lay of the land. Here's machine number 11, or my designation, number 11. And I'm going to go to the same place. So log into it, and then we'll open settings. And while I'm waiting on that one, I'm just going to go ahead and log into the last one on my other screen so that I don't have to wait on it so much. Okay, so that login is in process too, and we should be able to get to it shortly. So let me wait for this one to complete. Come on, there we go. All right, so settings. All right, settings here. Come on. These machines are sleepy. They just woke up, so it'll be a second, probably. But here they are. Okay, good. Settings. And then I'll expand and updates and security, and then delivery optimization. Same thing, you see the policy is in place there, and then activity monitor here. So I see 30%. Oh, and one thing I didn't do on the other is scroll down and show you data uploaded to PCs on your network, 626 meg, right? And then last machine, my designation number 12, let me pull it in to the screen and settings. Settings, okay. And then here, again, this is a really easy, quick way to get an idea what kind of an impact your delivery optimization settings are having. All right, cool. And then activity monitor. So here again, I'm getting 29% from the cache, and then I'm uploading 844 meg. So that around a 30% hit rate. And this is just 3 machines that I set up really, really quick just to demonstrate all of this for you. Now, what I want to do, and this is the part that may or may not work in the time that I have right here, but I want to go and I want to look to deliver an app, right? So rich copy, right? So I have actually delivered rich copy to a device, and I'll show that to you in a second, right? So I've actually got, let me go back here, and let me start with groups just to show you the config. So I've got a couple of groups here. Come on, console, catch up. Okay, I've got a couple of groups, starting with demo. So let's look at demo for a moment. And then the rich copy app, I already have deployed to this group, app target 1, right? So that group has just my one device in it. I'll just show you real quick. It's the 10, the one that I label 10 for this demo, has that device in it. As soon as this catches up, and there we go. And then the members, there we go. We'll have one member. All right. I promise it has one member. There we go. All right. Then I have the other group, demo group, right here that is currently not targeted, and it has 2 members in it, the remaining 2 devices that I want to deploy rich copy to, right? So with that being shown, there we go. With that being shown, let's go over to apps and make an adjustment to include this second group in the list of targeted groups for the app, right? All right. Here comes the console. Let's go look at all apps, and then we will find rich copy. Okay, where's rich copy? Rich copy, rich copy. Here. All right. Okay, so I can show you that, in fact, for the device install status, I do have a successful install for this one device. So what I'm going to go do now is go to Properties, and I'm going to add my second group as an assignment. And here's the point of this, right? I have rich copy that's already on device 1. And so when I add the second group, the other 2 devices, in theory, the rich copy install should come through delivery optimization to the second group of devices. So there we go. It's required. So I'm going to save this off. Review and save. And save. Okay. And just to be, it should absolutely happen already by itself, but just to be absolutely certain, well, I'm just going to let the process work. So I'm going to come over here and just kind of leave here for a minute, and I want to show you on this device. This is the one that already has rich copy, and I want to show you um, what kind of the hit rate is in terms of, actually, let me just show you another one of these devices. So here, this is one that should receive it, right? And so we'll just make a mental note. The from PCs on your network is 30.09%. So we'll just see if that changes. Right now, rich copy is not installed on this device, so we'll see what happens. Rich copy is installed on this device. Here we should see, where is rich copy? Come on. Microsoft Rich Tools. Okay, and just to be sure, let me go to the same area on that other device and make sure, but it shouldn't be there yet. Microsoft Rich Tools. Yeah, not there. Right, so we should, in theory, see the, and we're at 30.09, we should, in theory, see rich copy get deployed to the device in just a moment. So through the beauty of putting this in video, I'm going to actually pause for a minute, and we'll wait for rich copy to actually get deployed, and then I will come back and we'll see if anything changed. It may not have, but we'll see. So I'll be right back. Okay, so rich copy is here now, and interestingly, this number, it was 30.09. It went down a little bit, which that's not a huge deal to me. I was hoping that it would be up a little bit, but there's a lot of things that actually could be going on with this PC, so not sure. But we'll see a little bit more detail in a minute. But rich copy is in fact here, so that's one of my machines. And so let me get rid of this one and go to the third one. Here's the third machine. Let's see if rich copy's here yet. And it's here, right? So just to show, and we didn't look at this to see what the number was prior to installation, but we did in fact get it. So let's see, activity monitor. This was in the 20s, I believe, so it's still in the 20s. I don't remember what the number was, but it's earlier in the video if we want to look. Either way, the app is deployed to both of the additional targeted devices at this point. So we should be good. Now, again, the numbers went down a little bit compared to what I was hoping would happen, but it's a live demo, so you get what you get sometimes, but you still see the app was deployed. There's some other detail I want to show you, and so that's it for the demo. But there's a few other things that are absolutely pivotal to understanding this and to being able to validate it further, but not only validate, but troubleshoot if things go wrong or you want to see specifically what's happening and things like that, right? So let's shift gears and talk about those for a minute, right? Okay. So I'm going to pull back in one of my test machines. I'll just grab this one. Okay, fine. Okay. So here's one of the key points. So I mentioned that delivery optimization is built into Windows 10. It is. And if you go look for guides on how to configure delivery optimization, certainly you'll find guides that will talk to you about what I've just shown you, but you'll also find guides that will talk to you about using group policy to configure delivery optimization. And you absolutely can configure group policy settings to enable delivery optimization. But here's a very key point. MDM is not group policy. group policy is not MDM. And so when you configure something through MDM, this is not 100% true depending on what the configuration is, but it's largely true. And you then go look in group policy, you're not going to find it configured. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So here's my MMC and focused on group policy specifically for delivery optimization, right? So if I look down the chain, you'll see that I'm highlighted on delivery optimization, and there is not one thing configured in terms of settings here, right? So if you're troubleshooting this, remember group policy is not where you need to look to find out if certain settings are configured, right? There is a completely separate area on these devices where these settings delivered by MDM will be visible, where you can confirm that they're set, right? And that could get into a whole lot of discussion about, MDM is not group policy. There's some questions sometimes about, hey, I have some slow logon times because of policy. How do I detect those with MDM? Well, you don't, because MDM is not the same as group policy. It doesn't apply the same way. It doesn't tie into any of the group policy engines pieces on the device and so on, right? So it is its own animal. So how do I see the settings coming down through MDM? Well, I'm glad you asked. Handy that I have it here. So if you pop into regedit, and this will open directly to the MDM space, and you navigate to this location, right? Policy manager, current device, and then I'm honed in on delivery optimization. So these are my currently in place settings for my device. And so you see I have a few different things configured. I have device health monitoring configured, data protection, and then delivery optimization. And in fact, you will see all of these settings that I configured through MDM are in place on my device, right? So just to call out a couple, here's the max cache age that came down. Here's the right below it, the max cache age provider set that came down. The background download speed, the amount of bandwidth I can use. So here's the point. Here's the allowed disk size. So here's the point here, right? You can validate here. I am glad to see that, not surprised to see it, because that report basically said that nobody had received my configuration profile, which I knew was wrong. I don't know why that says 0. Don't know at all, because those settings are in fact in place on my device. But hey, again, that's kind of the risk sometimes of a live demo. But still, it's there. Another thing that's really interesting, right? And I'm specifically looking on this machine. This is 10, and this is where Rich Copy was initially installed. And I'm only going to be able to take this so far, because you'll see in a minute, I can't really hone in on exactly what is stored here. Let me jump ahead, right? So the key of delivery optimization is that these devices will store content and then make that content available to other devices that are in their same NAT or behind the NAT in their same group, whatever the configuration is. So where is this content stored? Where is the cache on a Windows device? So I'm again in the recommended location of the system folder. And so if I go into Windows and then navigate around, so I'm going to look for service profiles right here, right? And then all of this takes place under the network service. So I'm going to go here. And then I'm going to go to app data. Notice this folder is a little bit shaded, which means it's not visible unless you're showing hidden folders. So if you aren't showing hidden folders, you're not going to see this, and you will be stopped right here, right? And if you go into this, you'll be prompted for the fact you don't have rights to it. I've already said yes, so that's why I'm not prompted. And then I'm going to go into local, and then Microsoft, and then Windows, and finally, delivery optimization, right? So that is where my delivery optimization folder is located. And so that's where I'll see things like logs, which are interesting in case you need to troubleshoot what's going on. These are in the ETL format, so it takes a little bit of extra work to read them, but you can absolutely open up those logs and and see what's going on in a bit more detail if you need to. I'm not going into that level right here, but it is good to know they're here. It is good to know that you can convert them. You can read them if you need to, if things are going wrong. Here's the state, just some regular log files here if you need them. Okay, and so we can get this information if we need to from these logs. Now, these are interesting because notice I'll try to open it, and I've already created Notepad as my viewer for this. I'm going to try to open it, and I can't because it's used by another process. I'm also, this log 2 I can't open. It's in use by another process. Well, remember what I said at the beginning of the video, and that is delivery optimization is a service on your PC. So if we look at delivery optimization, certainly it's a service. It's running. I can stop this, and then that service will let go of these files, and I can open them. You see it's 166K, but if I open it, it's empty. So there's probably a log viewer that I just don't know, besides Notepad, that I need to open this. But still, just to show you that this is here, for sure, right? So there's interesting stuff here. I'm going to start that back and then close it, and then let's go back. Now, me stopping and starting that service, I don't know. I've never tried it before, except for on this live video. It may have affected the cache. Let's just see. Oops, sorry. Hopefully it didn't. Okay, good. It didn't, right? So under cache, you see all of the detail that is stored in the cache that's able to be served up and shared with peers. Now, my rich copy is somewhere in here, along with Windows updates and feature updates and different things. I can't really tell which is which. I'm sure there's a way. I just haven't dug deeper into it to know how to open some of these up. But you see a couple of different files that are representative, and you can just look through this and see again that this is a little bit beyond where I've dug into right now, but it's good to know that the details here, and so it gives you some handles, if you will, on how to troubleshoot this if we need to dig into it, if things aren't working, etc. Right? Okay, and so finally, tips and tricks. So there's just a couple that I want to point out. And the first is we've focused this session on delivery optimization as it is configured and implemented on a device that is fully and totally managed by Intune, MDM, right? Delivery optimization also is completely workable with Config Manager managed devices and pulls in and uses the Microsoft Connected Cache. We haven't touched on that except to mention it earlier, but we will have a session focused on how delivery optimization can help for devices that are managed by Config Manager, co-managed between Config Manager and Intune, and so we'll do that. There's also, as you might imagine, a fair number of frequently asked questions. So I thought about documenting them here and just walking through them, but there's a number of them. So instead, I just included a couple of links that will take you there. So if you do implement this, if you do have questions as a result, something you've seen that's maybe not something mainstream or something I didn't show here in the video, whatever, the frequently asked questions is a good location to be able to go and research what might be known about whatever you're seeing. And with that said, that is delivery optimization to devices that are managed through MDM. And so we will wrap the session here, and we will see you for part 8 next time.